For this episode, we welcome Andy Burnham. Andy is currently Mayor of Greater Manchester. Congratulations on your re-election, Andy. And has former roles in Gordon Brown's cabinet as Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Culture Secretary and Health Secretary. He has also been a vocal advocate of the hospitality industry, and we're delighted he has made time to join us today. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to Kate Nicholls, who again will lead today's session. Kate, over to you.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you for inviting me back again, and good to see you again, Andy. Congratulations on your election as Mayor and for your vocal support of the industry throughout the pandemic, regionally and nationally. It's great to be able to have a chat today. What I was going to do is talk to you a little bit about your priorities in Manchester for hospitality, ambitions for the Manchester economy more generally, and then look at the national picture and then conclude with some of the questions posed by our audience. So if people do have a question that they'd like to put to Andy while we're going through, put it in the chat function. We'll come to that to the last 5 minutes of the session. And then hopefully we'll be able to cover all of the issues that are hot on the topics and the front of mind of our hoteliers and our hospitality businesses that are joining us on the call. So just to start, I mean, I think you were saying earlier this week that, you know, your region, your area, particularly in the city centre, suffered really the hardest as a result of the pandemic. I think that the businesses in Bolton really haven't come out of lockdown since then. Could you just share with us your perspective of where the pandemic's most impacted in the region and how well you think the hospitality and tourism sector has responded to the challenges of the pandemic?
I will indeed, Kate. But before I do go into detail on that question, I'm just going to say it's great to see you. I'm going to let everybody into our little secret, which is that we were at university together, weren't we?
Yes.
Not just together, but in the same study groups. So it's wonderful to see you. And might I say, you have provided outstanding advocacy for the industry over the last 12 months, as has our very own Sasha Lord here in Greater Manchester. But
absolutely, well, it's been a pleasure to work with you and Sasha over the last few months, and I think after the small cohort of 6 of us, for 2 of us to be on the national stage at this point, I think it's quite a testament.
It is, and you've done brilliantly, both of you. So to answer the question, sorry, I should say thank you to David for his introduction, but to answer the question, it has hit us hard. And that is something we're still sort of struggling with, and people can see what's happening in Bolton at the moment. It's a reflection of obviously the inequalities in the country. The virus is better able to kind of take a hold in some of our poorer communities than it is where people are able to work from home and are supported to do so, and have homes that support that. And obviously in places where that isn't the case, the virus will take more of a hold. So we have been under restrictions, I think with the exception of Leicester, Kate, pretty much longer than anywhere else. And it's been a tough journey, as people can see. So Bolton, I mentioned, but you did as well. I was talking to a small hospitality business in Bolton a couple of weeks ago, just towards the end of the mayoral election campaign. And they were saying to me that they still hadn't recovered from the period in September last year where Bolton's hospitality on its own, not with anywhere else, was shut down almost overnight. And the cash flow problems that caused were still being felt by a very small business. And then, of course, we had all the tier 3 situation. And it's been a roller coaster really for our businesses. So pleased that they've opened, and been out myself sampling a bit of our wonderful hospitality this week. And yes, it's great for them, but they're all looking over their shoulder a little, aren't they, at the Indian variant and the concerns about it. And when the Prime Minister used that phrase again, local lockdown, I can assure you that hearts sank here, because we don't believe they ever worked, as we said last year, and we are certain they damaged jobs and businesses. So that's where we're up to. You asked me how did the industry respond, but I think magnificently is the only word I would use, in that I think the industry is more together than it ever was in terms of its voice. And as I say, you've played a part in that, Sasha, but lots of others as well. I could point to many other people here who've been really, strong voices for the industry. And the industry is sort of getting heard as one more than it ever has before, I think, at this moment in time. And that's been a good part of the industry's response. But I think the industry's also raised its game in terms of standards. And that is noticeable, and I think an incredible tribute to the industry, given everything, that they've still managed to lift almost the quality of what they do and the level at which they're operating. So really, really tough, but I think it will have a legacy that may be beneficial in the long run in terms of strong voice and raising of standards.
And do you see the industry in the same way as Sadiq does, as being a sort of driver, a catalyst of growth and recovery in the Manchester economy? Is it sort of at the heart of getting the city back on its feet?
Oh, massively so. I mean, it's us, isn't it? We're 24-hour party people, don't forget. This is our selling point. This is why people come to Manchester, for the atmosphere, for the events, for the experience, the nightlife, everything, all of it. It's critical to us. And actually, I'm trying to remember, there was a think tank that did a piece of work last year that said that the reason why we have been harder hit than other places is because more people work in the sectors that have been closed down the most. So we are more reliant on jobs in hospitality and the nighttime economy than other parts of the country, hence the damage. But no, I mean, we are just determined to get the industry not just back on its feet, but as I say, even better at what it does, and even more successful. And I can already see that. I'm going round Manchester at the moment, Kate. I mentioned being out the other night. Well, I was in this new place called Freight Island, which is in one of our major industrial sites, the Mayfield site near Piccadilly. It's just brilliant. I mean, it's, people have innovated and they've created new space, new environment. To its credit, the city council is pedestrianising and changing the streetscape, which helps, I think. So yeah, the northern quarter too, it looks very continental, and that's great. And so I think things, will be even better. I think nightlife in Greater Manchester, for all of the trauma that everyone's been through, and sadly some of the businesses we've lost along the way, I think it will be even better coming out of this, and it will remain absolutely at the heart of what we think is important as a city region. It's a big, big reason to come and visit Manchester and Greater Manchester.
And you set out in your manifesto quite an ambitious programme of sort of levelling up and what it means in practice, and particularly around the transport, how that can also be improved to unlock and make a big difference to those working and visiting in hospitality businesses. Can you tell us a little bit more about the top priorities that you've got there? What are the three big things that will make the biggest difference for hospitality as part of that?
Yeah, I think our wonderful hospitality businesses, are outstanding hotels, everybody is kind of held back by transport. It's just not good enough. And I think everyone on this call, GM-based businesses on this call, would say, yeah, that's just correct. We are world-class as a city region in many respects. Nightlife, as I said, sport, music, we are truly world-class in many things, but not in transport, genuinely not. And I always just describe it, Kate, in terms of the visitor to a second city. So if you go to a second city anywhere else I'm boldly saying that, by the way, there's no Birmingham sort of debate here, but if you go to any second city around the world and you walk out of the airport of the second city, you will see a consistent taxi fleet. You will see a good quality, comprehensive public transport offer. And you don't have that here. And that, I think, diminishes or might diminish us in the eyes of some as a destination. So it's got to change. So we are in the process of completely overhauling our transport system. We are bringing in a clean air zone. We're required to do that by the government. But as part of that, we are going to introduce minimum taxi standards for Greater Manchester with a single livery. Just a simple thing, but it means something. If you walk out of Manchester Airport in the future, you will see all white private hire vehicles, and they will all be licensed to a consistent standard across our 10 boroughs. But beyond that, and much more important, Kate, in terms of the priorities, it's about a London-style public transport system, initially over bus and tram, but in the long run over bus, tram and train. And the government's helpful announcement on rail today, I think, furthers that ambition. What do I mean by London style? I mean a single livery system, single branded system across all of the modes of transport. I mean much more affordable fares, a daily cap on what people can spend, no matter how many buses and trams they take. At the moment, you can spend a fortune traveling around Greater Manchester on the fragmented system that we've got. I think those who know the city well will know that if we get transport up to a world-class level, it will be a complete game changer for Greater Manchester, and I think will boost all of our hotels and our hospitality businesses.
Well, certainly we think people on the call will echo that, because I've spent too many times trying to get around Greater Manchester myself. It is incredibly challenging, and I think the ambition of business events and attracting that international traveller is going to be immeasurably boosted. And the other thing I think that's quite telling is around skills and workplace training and skill development, so that we can boost and level up skills across the region as well. Would you just be able to sort of tell us a little bit more about how you see that developing as mayor, and the opportunities that you can give to boost skills in hospitality?
So Sasha is very much focused on this. How do we raise the standard of what we do? And he has been looking at developing an operator standard across hospitality, so that we do become renowned for the highest standards. With regard to skills, I personally believe it's a great first or even permanent step for people. There are so many opportunities in our industry. We feel we've got to signpost our young people better to the opportunities. So we've introduced a system called GMAX, which is the Greater Manchester Apprenticeships and Career Service. If I could, I would encourage everyone on the call, again, who's GM based and has job opportunities in Greater Manchester, to look it up and start working with the team at the Combined Authority to put all of your job opportunities on that system. The idea, Kate, is that it's what I call a UCAS style system for apprenticeships and jobs. So for young people growing up in Greater Manchester, obviously it's very clear if you're on the university route. It's much less clear if you are on the technical education route. And we are trying to make it clearer by giving people a single portal to use. But what we also want to do, though, is work via Sasha with all of you on qualifications, training standards. What more we can do working with our colleges and our universities to lift those standards even higher. So it's not a fringe industry for us, but as you're hearing this afternoon, it's absolutely at the core of what we do, and we want a continuous commitment to improving quality.
And is that an area that you would work with the other metro mayors? I mean, I'm quite taken by the fact that you've got sort of very strong metro mayors of all political persuasions that have been more effective at holding the government to account during this pandemic, arguably, than some of the national politicians. And I think some of these areas that we're talking about, transport, regional infrastructure, skills, they're also devolved powers, if you like, and areas where you can have a big difference. Is that an area that you see there a role to play in having a coordinating group amongst the metro mayors?
Oh, definitely. So we do have one. It was called the M9. So it was the 9 metro mayors, and it is now the M10 with the election of the first woman metro mayor, the wonderful Tracy Brabin in West Yorkshire. So now that group M10 is 8 Labour, 2 Conservative, but we work in a very non-partisan, collaborative way. And the thing about a mayoral position that is different to a parliamentary position, if you like, is that it's about place, not party. And I just think that gives our voice that extra cut through, I think, particularly when you have a government that's talking about levelling up. Well, we're the places that need to be working with them to be levelled up, and we want to be levelled up. So I think our voice does have currency in these times. And what I noticed from the 2017 mayoral elections, which were the first ones, to the ones we've just had in May 21, back in 2017, the public was ambivalent, I think it's fair to say, or even worse, not convinced at all about the need for mayors and combined authorities. That has definitely gone. I think at the most recent elections, places with mayors were by and large saying, we like this is working, and we want more of it. And I think the vote in various parts of the country, not just in Labour areas, I think the vote reflected the fact that people living in areas with mayors can say, actually, we can see why this is needed and why it is working. And yeah, the more that we do work together on that cross-party basis, the better, I would say. And I think the government has got to now understand how it is going to work with mayors. You can't level up the country top down from Whitehall. You just can't. And if you try and do that, it's guaranteed to fail, completely guaranteed to fail. You have to level up bottom up. So the government has to sort of work with us and enable us to then drive the change. But we do it together, and we don't do it, we do it in a constructive way. And that's the way I want to work with them. So Greater Manchester will be the first to make a serious attempt at building a London-style public transport system. So if you had in Greater Manchester a system where it's £1.55 for a bus journey, as it is in London, or you have a daily cap of about £10, whatever it is, for travel, the hospitality industry, the skills pool for the hospitality industry will just be opened up immediately. And this is what I'm saying to the government. There's some criticism that they haven't defined levelling up and what it is. My argument is, help us create an affordable, good quality public transport system for the 2.8 million people who live in Greater Manchester, and you'll be creating the foundation for a more productive economy. And you'll be connecting every resident of Greater Manchester to training, to jobs, to opportunity. And that is levelling up. That actually gives it real meaning. And so we think if they work with us on that basis, they'll be creating a template for transport reform that can then go to Leeds and to Liverpool and to Newcastle and Sheffield, wherever else it needs to go.
And is that the sort of the cross-mayoral approach that you're sort of talking about when you talk about sharing best practice and ideas, sort of taking those templates that work in one area and sharing that idea when you move across to another?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because I think if we don't collaborate like that, devolution could founder a little if big businesses in your sector say, well, hang on a minute, Liverpool are asking us to do one thing and Leeds another and Manchester another. That would be a mistake from our side of the house, I think, because then we would be making it harder for businesses to work with the devolved mayors and combined authorities in England. What we need, there will be differences, of course, because they're different places, but we need some consistency in the core policy programme. So yes, we are very much, we're gathering next week for the first time after the election. So of course, Sadiq works very closely with us, and we will want to draw on London's experience over the last 20 years.
I was quite struck with, I had a meeting with Sadiq earlier this week where he was talking about taking the message out to Yorkshire and Leeds about how London helps them and how levelling up isn't about bringing London down, it's about making sure we spread the good news and the benefits across the country. And I'm just quite intrigued. I can't really leave that discussion around London. The decision to write a column in the Evening Standard, I think when they announced you as their new columnist, possibly the timing was a little strange, but they talked to you about a Northern Firebrand speaking on the issues that unite us all. Is that the kind of platform that you see being Mayor of Greater Manchester gives you, as opposed to being on the national stage and back in the House of Commons?
Yes, because I was surprised to get the offer from the Standard. It came in before the election, actually. But I talked it over with my other half, who and we both thought, well, hang on a minute. There has been a lot of, it's not fair in the first term, and it isn't fair, because why is public transport most expensive in the poorest parts of the country, which it is? Buses cost a lot more outside of London than they do in London. So there is that, and we can be justifiably angry about that on behalf of our residents. But there was a kind of sense of, well, hang on a minute, levelling up should be a unifying agenda. We've had Brexit, we've had COVID, and they've been divisive. So we can't allow levelling up to become the same. It's a bit at risk, I think, of becoming the same. Some places get funding, or it's like towns versus cities. And that is a mistake, I think, for the government to go down that path with it. And in that spirit, I thought, well, there's two things really here. I want Londoners to understand why we feel like we do about some of the issues that we've got and the unfairness of it. But at the same time, London has got left behind places. London needs to be leveled up with New York and Paris. So Sadiq does not have the same powers as the mayor of Paris and Hidalgo or Bill de Blasio in New York. And he should have those powers. You know, I'm a patriotic person. I want London to be absolutely, well, better than all of those places. So levelling up should be levelling up London with its comparator cities around the world. But it also should be about levelling us up with what is basic bread and butter provision in London, i.e. much more affordable bus fares for the travelling public. So I think levelling up can be unifying rather than about doing some down or picking winners and leaving losers. That would be a disaster for the country, I think, given where we are at the moment. Let's make this work for everybody. And my first column, which has landed in the Evening Standard today, you can look it up right now, is kind of making that argument. And it's about Manchester and London sort of finding common cause and saying to the government, come on, work with us in the right way here. An anti-city agenda, which is a little bit coming through with levelling up, Kate. I think you need to help us with countering that, because that's a bad way to go, bad for the hospitality sector.
I was just going to say that, I think there is the danger of our cities getting left behind. They are hollowed out as a result of COVID, and we have got big challenges there. And I do think we need to make sure that we can have those major metropolitan areas getting the focus they deserve, because if we're talking about international competitiveness, we have to make sure our UK cities work together so that Britain wins, because we are going to lose out. So it's no point in sort of fighting over whether the tourists come to Manchester or London. They need to come to both, but we've got to get them coming to the UK.
Absolutely. There's just a risk of cities being demonised a little bit, and it's towns that have been left behind because almost greedy cities have, taken, but they haven't, because outside of London, the English cities are massively under punching their weight. They should be so much more than they are. But in our case, we believe the city will lift the towns around it. The more we can build the city, and that is actually really beginning to happen in Greater Manchester now. So we have a mayoral development corporation in Stockport. And for those who've not been recently, Stockport is most definitely a place that is on the up. And we're seeking to build 3,500 homes in Stockport town centre, linked, underneath those famous railway arches there. And, many of the people who will live in those homes will work in Manchester's hospitality industry. And this is about rethinking our towns so that the whole of the city region works, towns and cities together in a symbiotic relationship, rather than pitching town versus city, which I think is a very, very unwise way to go. But if you do rethink a place like Stockport, which is happening, I can honestly tell you that is what's happening. The hospitality sector gets new opportunities in those reborn towns. The independent food and beverage operators. You can see the industry really benefiting from that kind of rethinking of both the city and the surrounding towns.
And just to wrap it up before we just check, and I can see a couple of questions in the chat before we look at what our audience is asking. How can we as a sector help you and the other metro mayors and indeed our local and regional politicians of all complexions? How can we help you with those agendas? How can we help you in Manchester delivering your ambitions around skills and transport, but also that ambition around cities and getting the message across?
Well, I think you are helping us. As I say, we believe that our industry, but also we can see it in the industry beyond Greater Manchester, has really, stepped forward. I think it's more unified than it's ever been. It's innovating in a way. It always does innovate, but really is innovating now. We're trying to help you with our councils being a bit more responsive sometimes, with the outdoor provision, etc. And I hope people are feeling that. I'm sure there's room for improvement there, but you are helping us. One thing I would say in terms of an area where I would ask for further support is on the whole question of good employment and giving people more secure employment. Because now I know in your industry, there'll be some people who will choose to have the most flexible form of employment because it works for them. But there are others for whom that makes life very, very hard indeed. And, we feel coming out of the pandemic, there is a need to raise employment standards, more secure employment, a real living wage. Now, That I know is tough to say that right now to your sector, given everything you've been through. But I think in the end, it does build more productive businesses. The more that there's a very strong sense of team spirit within and I think hospitality businesses, I'm no expert, but it looks to me from the outside that you do need team spirit within hospitality providers. And working with us on the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter is certainly something I would ask the industry to consider.
Well, we will certainly pick up on that. And we have our own National Hoteliers Charter, which is looking at promoting the best standards of employment practice in the hotel sector. So we will share that with Sasha and yourself, so we can take that forward as well. I just have a couple of questions in the chat before we finish. One question somebody said is, you mentioned that the powers that mayors don't currently possess. What powers would you like to have as a mayor, and how could you use them to benefit hospitality?
The biggest one, well, I've mentioned transport, which I think would benefit hospitality, but I think there may even be a bigger one than that, which is skills. If we controlled post-16 skills in its entirety, I think we would have a much more functional skills system than the one we currently have, which is run in a very remote top-down way and doesn't often match up with the needs of the economy at a local level. So I think skills and technical education is something the country has never done particularly well. It's always been a sort of an afterthought. It's often been academic education that just crowds out the pitch. And as I say, national skills initiatives never quite land on the ground. So build it bottom up. If you build a skills system bottom up, I think you get very focused on feeding the priority sectors within your economy. And I think we would work with you closely if we had control of the of that skills system. And I know that's a feeling shared by other mayors of all political persuasions.
Well, Andy, that's been fantastic to talk through. I can't believe it's gone so quickly in half an hour. But the skills agenda, training and workplace training and transport, those are all issues that are core of concerns for our hospitality members in Greater Manchester and indeed across the country. So we stand ready to work with you and support you and Sasha in the work that you're doing going forward. Look forward to continuing the good dialogue, and thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks, Kate. Just to finish, if I may, just to say thank you to you again for everything that you've done for our hospitality sector over the last year. But let's keep building this. I kind of feel we have kind of come together a bit, haven't we, in the last year? We've galvanized, we've kind of everyone is understanding the importance of hospitality. Everyone is loving being back. And, I think we all feel more loyalty, and we did anyway, but there's even more now, and we can see the benefit on people's mental health. And you're part of the health recovery of the country, giving people that company back, that good feeling that comes from being out in your amazing businesses. So I just think something has happened over the last year in UK hospitality, and we need to keep building it, don't we? Coming out of the pandemics, changing the streetscape together, changing the transport, lifting skill standards. It's exciting. It could be exciting, and I think we could end up. I hate to say this because it almost minimises what people have been through, but I think we will have a better hospitality sector in the UK in a couple of years' time because of what we've all done together to sort of, to get through this and to innovate and all the rest of it. So, yeah, well, just to say thank you to everybody on the call. Thank you for listening, and let's keep building this thing together.
Yes, and look forward to going out and seeing some of those new venues in Manchester next time I get up there.
You should. It's looking good out there. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Andy.
Cheers, Kate. Okay, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much once again for another excellent interview. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I echo a lot of what Andy was saying. Andy, thanks. I know he's not on the call now, but thank you again for joining us. I think he's right. We have a fantastic opportunity going forward to make our industry even better than it was before. And we need to embrace those opportunities that are out there for us. Kate, we are truly grateful for your support and appreciative of the work that you do on our behalf and the tireless way in which you do it. How you have the stamina to continue with the very early morning interviews that you do is beyond me, but I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everyone when I say that you're an inspiration to us all, so thank you. My final contribution for those of you on this call, and the reason I was originally supposed to speak on this particular webinar, was to talk to you about the Master in Holders scholarships, which we are launching again tomorrow. We weren't able to do these last year for obvious reasons, and we're delighted that we can then reintroduce them again this year for you. As ever, we're extremely grateful to the Savoy Educational Trust, the Forte Foundation, the Worshipful Company, and the Mastering Holders Charitable Trust for their continued support in making these priceless scholarships available to future leaders of our industry. For this, we need your help. Many of you on this webinar, have benefited from these scholarships, and we need you to spread the word far and wide to encourage as many applications as possible to make the selection process for these scholarships as challenging as we can. Not just within your own industry, within your own network of SJS and MIs, but also to your own wider networks of hoteliers. Please, we really want to get these scholarships out as far and wide across the UK as we possibly can. Many of us have benefited from them. They are absolutely priceless, and they will lead to the future leaders of our industry. So please do support them. The application form and details will be on the Mastering Holders website from tomorrow. So please do encourage people to go on there. We'll be doing the selection process and interviews from September and October. So please do get as many people to support these as you can. Thank you again to Kate and Andy, along with Wallace Vincent and Georgia Ward, without whom support we would not be able to do these webinars. We are hoping to bring you further webinars from senior government figures and industry leaders during the range of 2021. But perhaps we should allow hoteliers some time over the summer months following the recent reopening of indoor hospitality and hopefully the full lift of restrictions on June 21st. But we will bring some more webinars to you in the not too distant future. Please keep an eye on the Mastering Holders website where these will be announced. As ever, this recording will also be posted on there so you can follow the webinar again if you've missed anything. But until next time, when hopefully DMH will be available again to host these webinars, I wish you all the very, very best with the reopening process and much success for the future.